to another one of our webinar sessions, A Day in the Life of. Today, we are very, very excited to have Benissa Kayoka on board. Benissa is actually called Ziba, or that's what I call her. So that's what we're going to go by this afternoon. Ziba, welcome, and thank you so much for doing this after hours on a Monday. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Priya. I'm really excited that the Gradlin team reached out to me, and I'm so happy to share a bit of my experience.
Okay, that's so great. And speaking of experience, you are an experience design expert. Let's start there for our audience member. What exactly is an experience design expert?
So the best way I can describe an experience design expert is when you think of walking in your shoes, you do not have someone telling you how to tie it. You do not have someone telling you when it's too tight. You do not have someone telling you whether it's durable or not. But when you design, you have that in mind, right? So
Yeah.
I'm an expert in making sure experiences give for the intended use and purposes what it's supposed to function as. But also, it's bigger than just what people think experience is. You know, when you hear experience design, people usually move to user-centered experience design, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking about human experiences overall, whether it is in a learning setting or a product setting or a customer service setting. So that's essentially what experience design covers, but it's more that you don't have to have the designer or the architect sitting next to you to
Yeah.
enjoy what has been created for you.
Yeah. So it's sort of honing in on the practicality of what it is that the person is experiencing from the service or the product.
Exactly.
Okay, that's very exciting. So tell us, how did you get to this place in your life? Tell us a little bit about you. What did you study? What's your journey been so far?
So that is the interesting one because I studied a BCom Financial Sciences degree at the University of Pretoria, and I
Okay.
ended up in financial services in the industry itself. And what pivoted me was something that has probably been carrying me all along. I just never noticed it. I was always the go-to person. Hi, Benissa, I want to learn more about a product. You seem to get stuff pretty quickly. Teach me this really quickly. And then that's how I got into a bit of a coaching space. But little did I know that the best way for people to learn is for their experiences to be designed for that. And I didn't know there was such a thing called learning experience design. I found user experience design, and that's what led me more into that path. And it's a calling. I would say it's a calling, or it's accidental because I stumbled upon it
Yeah.
from my financial sciences degree up until now. I wouldn't have told you that this is where I'd end up, but I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing because I get to mix a bit of everything I've learned, from a bit of research, data science, to a little bit of design. I play around with designs. And then essentially, my main focus is the human, right? And the way we behave, the way we interact with things, and what are the things we appreciate the most, like convenience, ease, all of those things really play a big role in what I do. And I've been doing it my whole life. I just never noticed. And that's perhaps what experience is about. It's not supposed to be right in front of your face. And that's even how the career itself found me.
Yeah. So you've been experiencing the experience design before you became the expert in
Yes.
experience design. I love this. This is so cool. So, but okay, so you've used the word pivot. You did a
Yes.
BCom at UP, and then your journey sort of led you to where you are right now. And I can hear
Yes.
that it's been a very exciting journey. So we're going to get into that just now. But let's talk about the pivot element of that. How
Yes.
hard was it for you to pivot from one career into another?
I think it's quite a big decision to make, or it
Okay.
seemingly seems like a big decision to make when it's right in front of you. On the one hand, I thought, chartered accountancy is on my track, or a certified financial analyst. All
Yeah.
of those things seemed pretty within my track. And then I found myself bored with the subject matter. Yet at the same time, this is all you've known and been exposed to as your strengths. So I
Yeah.
didn't really know whether I was making a decision on a whim or whether I really was making a decision that's truly intuitive to me that would be the best thing for me. And the one thing that made me overcome that feeling of I'm not sure, should I go for it, was learning more. Just learn more about it. You're not gonna know until you know. So
Yeah.
I really took the time to not only talk to industry experts, but to also talk to people who I assume would be my clients if I were to go into experience design. Who would those clients be? Those would be executive level suit people. How do you speak to them? Those would be VCs from universities that are interested in curriculum development and design. How do I speak to those type of people? Those will be customers who want a digital experience, normal day-to-day customers just like myself. How do I get to interact with them, to learn what my purpose would be within experience design? That was my journey. To make the decision, it took the journey to ask. Very uncomfortable space, but I took it nonetheless. And when I got the answer, it didn't come in a day. It wasn't an aha moment in a second. It took some
Yeah.
time. I would say over a span of 2 years of really just figuring things out. And then I got my green light, or my North Star, perhaps more than a green light. I was always going, and then I'm looking towards this experience design expertise that nobody knows about. And then I just charted towards it from there. But yeah, it was that uncomfortable, difficult process of, is this what I really want? Or am I running away? And then I just realized I'm going towards, I'm not running away at all.
Yeah, it was always sort of your calling. I love that you say that you learned this from like sort of from difficulty. Just just to sort of simplify what you've said, because there's so much truth to be said that I mean our greatest journeys or our greatest lessons always come from an area of uncomfortability,
Yes.
so to speak. As part of that sort of uncomfortability, pivoting from one career to another into experience design, did you do any short courses or anything that sort of aided you into this transition?
Yes, so I did do a short course in user experience design that did help me understand a bit more about universal design principles, as well as the research that would need to go into it. So the maths in my mind was like, what am I going to do with all of these numbers? I like numbers because they essentially tell stories. And then that course really helped me understand that. And nothing beats real life hands-on work experience. I think a big part of my learning also came from putting into practice what I've learned, learning to do the research I need to inform my design. That whole process really helped to get like the hands-on experience of working with ambiguous big sets of data and speaking to people and taking those observations in as research. So coupled with just a bit of an interest, curiosity, and some formal background on design principles, but then the real learning happens in the work. And I think that will continue to happen. So it's always going to be with adult learning as it is, 10% of the formal, and majority of my time, which is the 70%, I spend learning on the job. It is not easy, but
Yeah.
it is really worth it to learn from mistakes. It's really worth it to learn feeling like I'm going to fail forward. I might not have every single idea of how to approach the task or the solution from the beginning, but I get there. I will figure it out. And I think that's what's really helped in my learning as well, just hands-on experience.
Yeah, I'm also hearing a lot about communication as a skill and an element of stubbornness,
Yes.
definitely.
So a lot of people have asked me around the pivot and how to learn even within their own career acceleration. And
Yeah.
one of the key things is to have the audacity. Have the audacity, and that's
Nice.
gonna get you far, right? You get into a
Yeah.
space, and I believe that I can. That is enough of spice that you need to really tackle any of your challenges. So that for me is definitely having the audacity is one of the big things. Communication is very key to me. It's something that I'm learning continuously. I am not just naturally a public speaker. A lot of people speak to me like, "Oh, where did you learn how to speak like this?" It's something that I've trained on, I've worked on from early days in childhood to attending one of the great things that helped me with that was attending the National School Arts Festival when I was in high school. And we did a public speaking workshop. And I always thought I'm great at expressing myself, but then I learned the art of also listening and how that
Yeah.
communication, right? Sometimes you need to pause, sometimes you need
Yeah.
to listen, and sometimes you really don't know, and you can communicate that, and it's not going to create an awkward situation. It's going to create this vulnerability where we both know that, hey, you can trust me. This is what I don't know, but you can trust me to get you there. That needs to happen with a lot of communication tricks. So I would say from there and moving on in my career, interviews and getting rejected in interviews and
Oh,
learning, learning, oh, maybe I shouldn't have positioned it that way. Learning how to communicate during conflict while working with various groups of people. All of that has really helped me to learn how to hone my communication skills. Yeah.
you know, it's so interesting that you say this. Gradlinc has been running this webinar series since the beginning of the year, and every single professional that we've had on the series it's been the same thing: communication and active listening as skills. You know, aside
Yes.
from the qualifications, the grit, the audacity, the stubbornness, communication and active listening is it's almost on the forefront of every single career that we've, you know, sort of interviewed in this whole process.
Yeah, I would like to think that nobody really knows what you know. You have to communicate it, right? And you also don't know what you don't know. So you have to find out that all is reliant on navigating the unknown. You have to communicate, you have to ask, you have to speak up for something that you believe in. When you say you have the audacity and the stubbornness, it is such a key skill. And let's debunk the myth. It's not just for some, it's for all of us. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to express yourself exactly like the next person, but you do need to know how best to position your responses, how best to respect different diverse cultures and needs. All of those things take practice. It takes the level of intended commitment to improve on it as well. It's not going to happen overnight, like I said, but it's definitely something that's been key in me being able to deliver any result. You can't do it sitting quiet, nor can you do it being the only one speaking in the room. Then you're in the wrong room. So it's definitely key. One of the soft skills that are right up there with problem solving, communicating for that impact.
Okay, so something that you say on a daily basis. So let's take that into the topic. You sort of slide into. We'll transition there. Tell us a little bit about a day in your life as an experienced design expert. What do you do with yourself on a daily basis?
So on a daily basis, I hype myself up, number one. And I
Nice.
say this because it is quite draining to get into your creative space and element and balance the necessities of day-to-day administration. So my day really looks like hyping myself up in the beginning. I find something that I can get myself ready and started for the day so I can kickstart a little boost of energy that I need. Majority of the time I'm spending is through this process. I do research. I have to talk to a lot of stakeholders and people. So I do a lot of research to understand, what am I designing for? Who am I designing for? What problem am I solving for? And that looks like me with my headsets on and my laptop,
Nice.
kind of plugged in, doing the research, analyzing it. That's where I'm really into it. And the other side of it looks like talking to people, managing project deliverables. All of that also plays a big role in my day to day, which requires me to schedule my time efficiently and know when I should have breaks or not. And I will admit that I'm not good at it yet, but I do try to manage my breaks because of my back-to-back meetings that can sometimes happen. And then there's a part of my day that I call focus time. My focus time is really for me to try and do a few design related sprints so that I can get that creativity out. It doesn't run dry, but you can feel tired. And it's very
Yeah.
important for you to dedicate some time to block it off in a space where there's as minimal distraction as possible. So my day flows between a roller coaster of talking to people, working alone, focusing on design. And then it's crunching numbers, whether I'm managing the budget of a project, myself, my own financial budget, really plays a big role in my day to day. So it does look like that. It starts up with the hype and ends up with some numbers.
Yeah. So how did you find this formula for yourself, Nziba? Like it clearly works for you. I can hear it from what you're saying. What's your secret here? How did this work? How did you find this?
So I think I really would love to feel that COVID spearheaded me to have to find it.
Yeah,
Working in a traditional setting of going to the office and being present automatically meant that you're working when you're physically present in an office, right? And with COVID, we had to work remotely, and I couldn't manage that disconnection. When do I start working? When do I stop? When do I
yeah,
take a break? When do I eat? It did impact that. And that was part of my transition phase as well. So it was very important for me to understand how I would manage working full time, studying a little bit. All of that really prepared me for figuring out a formula. And no day is like the next. There are other challenges that are thrown your way and other important tasks that come, your way, and you have to prioritize. But I found that if I block off that time that I need for specific things, I can work around it and shift it. So
yeah,
I've found the formula in trying to see how I can break myself away from working from home, working on work,
yeah.
delivering on what I need to deliver in, and taking care of myself.
Okay, all right. I like that. I think COVID definitely taught us a lot of lessons. I sometimes work from home, and I must admit I am better at it now, almost to a point where I think I'm more constructive, working from
Yeah,
home than going into the office, because then you're talking to people the entire time. But I don't want to. I'm digressing now. We've got a couple of questions coming in on the platform with regard
yes.
to sort of the method of how you enter into your field. So the specific question here is, if I wanted to do the work that Benissa does, how could I get into it? So what I'm assuming the student would like to know is this, are there internships available? Would you research something on the internet with regard to going into your industry? How would young graduates today in South Africa go into your field?
That is a very good question, right? Because that's the first question I asked myself going into the field, right? How do I get there? What do I do? So it's about exploring exactly what experience design covers, right? There is product design, there is customer experience, there's learning experience design, which is fairly a relatively new term. So a lot of people might not know it, but when you do your research, you get to see what are the different elements within that work, which include, for example, I saw that there was research. So I saw that my numbers element would be kind of fed by this experience. And
Yeah,
then you see that there's a bit of design. So you have to do something design related. That type of thinking will really help you make a decision as to where you need to go. But at the end of the day, it's 10% formal education that gets you in. You got to remember that it's not going to be, all right, Benissa, I want to get into what you got into. Let me study a whole degree and then figure it out after.
yeah,
Look at what you do have, right? One of the big things that are our biggest strengths is that we have the human experience. So if you're
yeah,
designing for humans, you already have something intuitively to lead by. Now you need to understand what your interests are. What do you prefer? Because some people might not prefer digital products. Some people might prefer physical products, and to design for that. It
yeah,
really needs to depend on your interest. But the very first thing I would say is to first do research, and then from there, you can look for internships that cover the skill sets needed. You might not get an experienced design job from the get go. You might not get an internship from the get go either. But if you know that you'd like to work a little bit more towards a specific strength, get a job that helps you communicate better while you're learning how to deal with people. That's still an element towards it. If you need to get a little bit more design experience, you can even freelance. You can volunteer for NGOs to help them build their websites. You can partner with other people who can do development for you, and you focus on experiences. It's all up to you in terms of your interests, but I wouldn't say rely on getting a formal qualification first. Rather, rely on getting experience that can help you with one of the skills and keep working your way towards what you more inspired to do. So
yeah,
that's sort of the trajectory I would advise. If you want to get into experience design, learn a little bit more about the different roles, and then learn about the skills you could gain from any of your experiences. Don't be too tied to one experience, because I don't think that you will find a immediate experience design job after you graduate.
Yeah.
You could find something in, for example, your engineering, your industrial engineering. You might find process design and then lead into experience design. It depends really on where you're coming from.
Yeah. So that's actually interesting that you said that now, because Andy would like to know if learning experience design is the same or similar to instructional design.
Great question, because I had the same question when I was doing the research. What's the difference? So while instructional design can be part of learning experience design, instructional design is not learning experience design. Learning experience design has instructional design, gamification. It has a lot of research and data analytics. While you might find some principles from instructional design informing that, it's not entirely on its own. I think learning experience design covers more end to end, from content design to development, whereas instructional design really sits on the content and making that more digestible and making sure that the instruction to the user, who will be the intended learner, can really understand the information that they are now accessing for the first time. Learning experience design, I can sit and be developing something that will be an HTML file and upload it onto an LMS. Instructional design doesn't have to go that far.
I see. Okay. All right. That's interesting. Speaking of loading HTML files in LMS, there's a follow-up question. This is flowing beautifully. I love this. We have a student who would like to know what tools they can practice on in order to become better at learning experience design. So, what software would you recommend students to practice on in order to get better at this?
Well, so one of the softwares that I find very user-friendly to use, and the learning curve is not too difficult, has been Articulate. It's really been easy for me to use, coming from the fact that you have a bit of experience with PowerPoint, and then you can really navigate quite easily with it. I would highly recommend still using Articulate to learn. It really pushes your thinking anyway, because you start trying to play around with the tool and think, okay, what else can I do? And that's when, if you do want to expand into development and you do want to get into HTML, basic coding, JavaScript, you can do that. And you can learn how to integrate it. So I would highly recommend playing around with Articulate in general, and any of your Adobe illustration design tools that can help you if you are more inclined to design.
Okay, all right. So just for our audience members, if you are curious about these specifics that Ziba has spoken about, we are very happy to reach out to her after the fact, and we can pop the information onto our website so that you can go and check it out. Just so that I can ensure that I'm spelling everything right, essentially. So
All right.
you mentioned now briefly development. So you talk about JavaScript and so on and so forth. Our audience members, they are studying various things, or they've just graduated. Do you think it is more or more, or is it more beneficial to have some sort of a background in some kind of coding language? Does it make much of a difference?
Yes, I would like to think that it does help, especially with the one thing that happens with design is you can design anything that's great doesn't work. So it's
Yeah.
very important to become versed in just at least understanding the basics and some of the things that can really help you. Because sometimes I do find myself still coding after I've developed on Articulate, just a little bit of
Okay.
something. Nothing too hectic. If it's not your thing, do not worry, do not panic. It doesn't have to be your thing, but it's always good to know, especially if you're also passing on your project or your design project to a client that will have to manage it on their own. You do want to make sure that they do not have any challenges, or if they do, that you are able to speak to how they can solve them on the LMS if you're not helping to administrate. It's one of the things that I did see that really helped me. Also with product design of digital experiences, whether it's a website or a digital product, it is quite interesting to notice and know so that you're well versed. If you do end up leading a project within experience design and you have to tell an instructor developer what should happen, you should kind of know what type of journey they're going to go through. Just have a rough idea. You don't always have to be the one that knows everything in the room, but
Yeah.
it's a good place to have some reference on all of these things.
Yeah. Ziva, we're getting a lot of questions about this now, and I'm worrying about time. So I'm
Yeah.
getting a lot of questions with regard to courses. So there's one. I saw some stuff on Udemy. Is it worth it? Google that. There's all kinds of questions. So there's clearly an interest in where graduates and students can actually do proper good courses.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on where they can do not accredited courses, but courses that actually make sense for them to get into this field?
Yeah, so Udemy is a good bit, like I said, foundational, right? You can
Yeah.
get your general interest going on it. One of the most our search engine that we use the most is YouTube. Like, don't run away from YouTube. YouTube is actually quite a great resource. You can get a good understanding of what it might look like. Again, just a basic understanding. I'd highly recommend reaching out to people like myself and other people who are practicing if you really want to know how it looks like on a day-to-day, so you can see, okay, measure. This is how far I'm at applying myself within this role. I think I need to work on one, two, three, four, make it a reasonable goal. Okay, I want to work a bit more on universal design principles, or maybe you want to work more on human behavior and human behavior psychologically so that you can understand how they interact with these things. Whatever your interests are, any resource can give you the foundation of what you might need to know. I would recommend giving yourself a Google search. You can find something.
Something.
Maximum
Yeah.
5. You don't need to read the same thing over and over again. 5 different resources. Get yourself in connection with people who are busy in the industry. It's a very nice community of people. Everyone really wants to teach the next person what to do and how to navigate this, which is how I got to where I got to.
Yeah.
And there are other resources and books and stuff that I can recommend. I think if you can reach out to me, I can give you a list. I can give you a
Fantastic.
list. Yeah, I think let
Yeah.
me do that for some of the people who might want to read a bit more in detail about some of the principles that they can learn that can help them navigate this.
Yeah. I was reading a book the other day, and it was, I'm not saying it correctly now, but it was something in the lines of when you don't know what to do, just take one step forward, you know? So I
Yeah,
love that. Like, if you want to get into this and you don't know what to do, just go on Google, take one step, learn the one thing, kind of thing,
yes,
and then build on that.
definitely.
Um, So we have limited time. I was so worried this
Yes.
was going to happen. And I absolutely have to ask you this. I told you, snooping on your LinkedIn page today, and you have this beautiful sentence. So we're going to talk about that for a minute. Music is a recipe to learn anything. What is the story there?
The story there is like music from Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Yeah.
The story there is from my son, really. I sing the song and I say it like this: C'est fini, papa. And it's in
Oh,
French, which says it's finished, right? And I call my son Papa. So what happens is that every time I try to soothe him, that's the song that I soothe him with. And I found him soothing his toy because the arm had broken off. That's a story for another day, how the arm broke off. But the fact that he was remembering the song, sang it, and understood its intended purpose taught me everything about music.
yeah.
It's repetitive, it's easy to understand, but it also reveals quite deeper meanings and relationships of humankind and nature. So it's such a beautiful way of understanding how people learn. If
Yeah.
we could learn everything in music, I'm sure a lot of us would
Oh,
be
yes.
experts in anything and
Oh,
everything.
absolutely.
We know the favorite tune or song to some of our favorite series or movies without even thinking about it. And that's
Yeah.
essentially what you try to create with learning experiences and any other experience. That's seamlessness. And that's what music really represents as the best recipe. So if you think about music, you think about how repetitive it is, you think about its structure, its flow, you also
Yeah.
think about how the meaning gets told through stories. And that's
Yeah.
why it's the best way to explain the best
That's
way to learn.
that is so wonderful, and the perfect way to end this webinar series. I need to
Yes.
thank you and say goodbye now. This has been so much fun. It feels like it's just been 5 minutes. And Ziba, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to talk to us and our audience members. This was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. And please reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.